All right, it's time, so we'll go ahead and get started on chapter 3. I have a couple of housekeeping items, though, I want to talk about. Last week, I didn't have some of this additional information on the slides, and I got talking about it, or thinking about it, and so I want to cover this. This is kind of just going back. This is very similar to one of the last slides last week. I went ahead and looked up some examples and provided them here. I talked about on page 11, 2.14, that I told you that I disagree that you really need to spend a lot of time remembering this one. And so I have some examples here. All of my apps, all of my Bibles that I have, Hebrew Bibles, it does not do what they say in 2.14. I'm thinking that must have been an old printing thing. Perhaps in days gone by, they had trouble with this. So what we see now, they were saying that you only get there, like one dot there above the scene. That doubles as also the holum vowel. But as you can see that both dots are there. This first dot tells you it's a scene, and the second dot tells you there's an O after it. So the name of this place is Sorake, and it can be spelled, that would be defective because the Vav is not in here, it's over here. It can be spelled this way. I don't know that it ever is spelled that way in scripture, but it's Sorake. But anyway, you can see I'll move my red marks, and you can see that it's got the holum vowel right next to the scene indicator. And then they specifically mention Yoshavim, and they say that it doesn't have that holum over the yod, and that the sheen doubles for the holum. But as you can see, that's not the case. And like I say, everywhere I look, this is what I see. So I think you can just say successfully or safely ignore, well, and then the one from Deuteronomy is the same, basically the same thing for a scene. The holum is also there. So I think you can just ignore that 2.14. I do not see that happening. The other thing that I wanted to just touch base on from last week was also on page 14. There's a chart with vowels there. And I asked you to draw arrows to what vowels can lengthen to and what they can reduce to, because vowels will lengthen and vowels will reduce. And so the first one, I'd give you a visual here. I just told you last week that I went ahead and by the way, I put both these slides in. So if you're ever in one of my Hebrew courses again, these will be where they should be in lesson 2. So the patach can lengthen to a comets. The patach can also lengthen to a sere. The segol can lengthen to a sere, and the hirik can lengthen to a sere. The comets hatuf, that would be the O vowel. It can lengthen to a holum, the long O vowel. And the kibbutz can also lengthen to the holum. And then they can also reduce. The hirik can reduce to the reduced segol vowel, the hatef segol. And the kibbutz can also shorten to the hatef comets, the O vowel there. So those are all of the arrows that you should have in your book, because we will go back, in future chapters, we will go back and I'll say, well, if you go back to page 14 and look at the charts, you can see that this vowel lengthened or something like that. So that's why it's good to know which way they can go. Any questions on that? All right. Another question that came up was pronunciations. And I teach modern Hebrew pronunciations. I need to have a caveat on that. Now, the pronunciations I use are definitely different than the book, because the book is used on traditional pronunciations. That was a guess made long ago on what it might have sounded like. Well, as I said in the first lesson, over 100 years ago, about 130 years ago or so, Eliezer ben Yehuda resurrected the Hebrew language as a spoken language, and so he did a lot of this work for us. And so I don't use the traditional pronunciations. You're free to use whichever one you want. If you want to use modern or you want to use, I use modern because Bonnie and I, we used to, we'd like to, we have only once here recently joined a Shabbat service. And so we want to be pronouncing things the way everybody else is pronouncing it. And when we're in Israel and I'm trying to talk to somebody, I want to use the correct modern Hebrew pronunciations. That's why I use it. Now, you will find on the internet other places that say it differently than I have it. And I think it's just good to realize that we're painting with a broad brush. We're trying to cover everything pretty basically. There's some details we don't always go into. We'll go into them more a little bit later. But in different places in Israel, they will also pronounce things differently. Just like I once saw a book called How to Speak Texan. And in Texan, this book says Ford. And I always thought Ford was a motor vehicle, but Ford in Texas, for those Southern Texas speakers, that's the area above your eyebrows, below your hairline. I bumped my Ford, or awl. I thought I knew what awl is. Awl is either a tool that you use when sewing leather, or awl just means everybody or everything. But in Texas, South Texas, awl mean that's that black stuff they pump out of the ground. They make motor oil out of it. And they make gasoline out of it and diesel fuel out of it. All they pump the all out of the ground. So people in this country, we're all speaking English, but there's different pronunciations and there's different ways of saying things. Like if you get up to the Northeast, you might hear you skies, or you get down to the South, and you might have all y'all. And even I do that from time to time. My brother moved down to the Southeast, and he said that he never knew that truck had three or four or two or three syllables in it. And I never heard that before either. He's actually here in Springfield looking at my truck, and he said, that's a nice truck. So apparently down in the Southeast, truck can have truck. So even though we're all speaking English, we have different ways of saying things around here. Now, I've taught you that the serre, which is the two dots under a letter, I'll just use Isaiah here. You put those two dots there next to each other, that's serre, and that's A is in obey, or and they, 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 the A sound. But well, there's a story behind this. The guy that from whom I learned Hebrew, he learned Hebrew using this. Actually, he was using probably the second edition. We're on the third edition, but he's using the Pratico Van Pelt book. He learned Hebrew. Then after he learned Hebrew, he spent a month at a college or university in Jerusalem, and it was an immersion class. And so he got to learn how they pronounce things there in Israel, in Jerusalem. And he had learned it the same way. I'm telling you, A is in obey, or they. To us, it's a long A sound. And he stopped somebody one time. He said, wait a minute, this is a CRA, right? And yes. And he says, and that makes the that long E like obey, right? And I said, yeah. He said, but the word you just said, that sounded like eh. And he said, oh no, it's the same thing. Sometimes our ears hear things a little differently than their ears. And they say, no, it's the same thing, but they're actually doing something. So that's one difference. Sometimes the heuric, and it'll be like eh, as in bit. But we were pronouncing it I, or I'm not sorry, not I, but E as in machine. The long I. E as in machine. E. There will be variations on it. And I've got Netanyahu written there, and you may hear on the news or on YouTube, News from Israel, sometimes they'll pronounce Benjamin Netanyahu's name as Benjamin Netanyahu, Yao. And it really just makes a difference on how, another name is Isaiah. That's why I've got Isaiah listed here. Isaiah Yeshayahu. Yeshayahu is how you say Isaiah in Hebrew, but that Yahoo at the end is the same as Netanyahu. And so sometimes You can be listening to somebody in Israel and they're enunciating their words properly, and it's Yeshayahu. But then there are others who will say Isaiah, say Yeshayahu. And so instead of Yahoo, it comes out Yao. And in the same way, you'll hear Netanyahu's name, Netanyahu or Netanyahu. So just be aware that even though we're using modern Hebrew pronunciations, there are still going to be some variation in pronunciations. Any questions? All right. Well, we'll look at another modern phrase. We'll review the alphabet. Excuse me. We'll review the vowels. We'll see if there's any questions from last week. And then we'll jump into chapter 3 with syllables and pronunciations, and we'll go over the vocabulary. And then if we have some time, I've got answers to some of the worksheets I gave out. We'll just see how far we get. So starting off modern phrases. Next month, less than a month away, is Rosh Hashanah. Here it's down here. Rosh Hashanah. Rosh, there's the Holam, that's the O, it's a Sheen, Rosh, and then Ha, you'll learn that that's the, that includes that Dagesh there. Hash Shana, Rosh Hashanah. That's the new year, or it's also called the Feast of Trumpets. And in Rosh Hashanah, if you're talking to a Jewish person, you want to greet them, you would say Shana Tova. They say it fast and it sounds like one word, Shana Tova. Shana Tova, but it's two words. Shana is year and Tova is good. When we get to chapter 4, you'll notice that this is feminine and this is feminine, that comma's hey ending. And because this is the adjective, it's going to agree with the noun. The year is the year, Shana is noun, it's feminine, so the adjective is going to be feminine as well. That's just kind of you don't have to remember that right now. We're going to be looking at that later. So anyway, that's the greeting, Shana Tova, during Rosh Hashanah. And it'll start on sundown on the 3rd, and it'll end on sundown on the 4th. So most of the day of the 4th. So that's a modern phrase that you can use. It's not in the scriptures to say Shana Tova. So let's do an alphabet review. Alphabet Ivri. And we'll just go through this. Aleph. And you can say it with me. You don't have to unmute or anything, but you can just say it with me while we're on together here. Aleph, Beit, Gimel, Dalet, Hey, Vav, Zayin, Chet, Tet, Yod, Kaf, Lamed, Mem, Nun, Samek, Ayin, Pei, Sadeh, Kof, Race, Seen, Sheen. These are just one letter, but we have to differentiate them. Seen, Sheen, and Tav. So that's our alphabet. It's not going away. You say, well, that's still kind of foggy with me. You know what? As we until we get to May and finish chapter 36, there will be times we'll be looking at something. I'll say, well, look at that mem right there. Or I'll say, look at that kof right there, and you're going to still hear. My Greek professor said, this class is not like, and Hebrew's the same way. So this class is not like your other classes where you can just cram it and take your tests and then forget it. He says you have to build on it. And so we will be building on it. So these are not going to go away. Okay, then we also have the final forms, the sofit. You don't have to remember they're called sofit. In English, we always say final forms. Sofit is the Hebrew word for it. But the kaf and by the way, these are descenders. Those go below the line of writing. Mem is the only one that does not have a descender. So we have the final form of the kaf, mem, nun, pei, and sadeh. And these are the regular forms at the bottom. So those are the final forms, 5 final forms. Then we have the Begad Kafat letters that can have a Dagesh Lineh or a weak Dagesh. And out of those, for modern Hebrew pronunciation, only the Beit, Kaf, and Pei actually change. So it could be a B sound, and you remove the Dagesh, and it becomes a V sound. It's a K sound, but you remove the Dagesh and it becomes a sound like the chet. It sounds exactly the same. And then pay, instead of you take away the Dagesh, it becomes the F sound, or PH as in elephant. There's still the F sound. So those are the ones you have to learn two sounds for. And then we have the gutturals. Aleph, Hey, Chet, and Ayin are the gutturals. And Resh sometimes acts like a guttural and sometimes it does not. And we'll actually be talking about that later in this lesson. So just for fun, since you've learned your alphabet, I saw this while I was in Israel. You can probably guess what it says. There's the bait for the B sound. The Aleph is going to be silent, although it could have like a commas or something under it for, or a patak for an A. And then Tet is going to be a T sound. And then Mem is also probably going to have a vowel under it, whether it's a commas or a patak. And so we have Bat, Man, Bat, Man. And here's another one. You can probably figure that one out too. Again, a lot of Hebrew, they don't use the vowel marks. We know that this one has to have a shurik, be a shurik right there for you. Su, per, probably has a segol here. Su, per, and then an A vowel there, mon, supermon. And then you'll probably never guess what that one is. You have the M sound, M. Okay, so this is going to be an O, probably has a holum there. So McDonald's, and they even use the apostrophe, even though that's not really part of Hebrew. But that's what they do with it. That's a sign that all of those pictures came from Israel. I took those pictures while in Israel. All right, that was just for fun. I don't know if it was fun for you. I think it's kind of funny, but anyway. So let's do a vowel review. And we're going to read on this one, we're going to read from right to left. We have the comets, the tsere, and the holum, and it's pronounced ba, be, and bo. And then we have, that's long vowels. Then the short vowels, this is going to be a comets hatuf. That means it's an O vowel. All right, and we'll talk about that later on today too, so you can distinguish a comets like this one up here on the top with this one here in the short row. So we have a patak, we have the segol, hirik, comets, atuf, and kibbutz, and it's pronounced ba, be, bi, bo, bu. And then we have the reduced vowels. You have the reduced comets. You can see the comets. We're going to talk about the shva today as well. And so we have, that reduces it. And then the segol, reduced segol, and the reduced comets, which is an O vowel. It's these two are related. And so it's ba, be, bo. And then we have the vowel letters. And I actually have these in there backwards. I was going to straighten it out, but it's going to take too long. So we're going to live with it this way. And so we have ba, which makes sense. Ba, be, that makes sense. But this is also be. It's when you have the segol, hey, it's still the same sound. So we have ba, be, and bo. With a vav, we have bo and bu. The shurik is the U sound. The holum vav is the O sound. And then with the yod, we have be, and b. Again, the segol is like this segol up here. Whoops, this segol over here. It acts the same as the tsere, like that. So be, and b. Okay, so that's vowels. Does anybody have any questions so far, or questions from the workbook? That does remind me, I have a PDF with the answer key to the workbook. The best way to do it is to treat the workbook like a test, go through and do everything you can with it, and then check it against the answer key. The answer key is not perfect. There are errors in it. I don't know that I've found all of them, but I do know that there are errors in it. But mostly it's correct. And so I will try to remember to get that sent out to you guys. That way as you work on the workbook, you'll be able to check your answers. The answer key does not have the translations, and we'll go over translations and as we do that in the future. All right, let's go on then. So chapter 3, syllabification and pronunciation. My Greek professor told me we don't want to do syllabification. And since he said that, I can hardly pronounce the word right after that. Okay, so today we're going to learn the rules of syllable division, which is pretty easy. Understand how Hebrew words are accented, distinguish between Dagesh linne and a Dagesh Forte. That'd be a weak is linne and Forte is strong, a strong Dagesh, a weak Dagesh. To distinguish between a vocal and silent Sheva, and distinguish comets from a comet sawtooth. Larry talked about that a little bit ago. I mean, not distinguishing, but in fact, we're going to talk about it. And then some special rules for syllabification. That's where we're headed. We're going to start with rules for syllable division. There's only 2 basic rules. Every syllable must begin with the consonant and have only 1 vowel. And there are some exceptions, and we'll talk about some of those today too, and we may see some exceptions as we go. But we're kind of painting with a broad brush, and this is going to be true most all the time. Okay, every syllable must begin with 1 consonant and have only 1 vowel. There are only 2 types of syllables, open and closed. Open syllables end with a vowel, and closed syllables end with a consonant. So if we take the word devar, which means word, and we split it up into syllables, we see that the dalet has a vowel, has a comets, the bait has a comets. So this bait is not linked up with that dalet as a syllable. Instead, the syllable is going to break between those 2. So let's do that. There we go. So we have davar. The da is an open syllable because it ends with a vowel, and var, or var rather, davar, that ends with a consonant. That's a closed syllable. And that's everything you need to remember about syllables. Well, it's not everything. It's most everything. Open syllable, closed syllable. And the thing you'd look for now, if there was some kind of a vowel underneath this resh, then you'd expect to see, well, it wouldn't look like that. But that would be an indicator that even these 2 would be split, but that's not the case. So that's a closed syllable. So those are the rules of syllable division, and we need to understand how words are accented. Hebrew word accents, Hebrew, most words, the lion's share, are accented on the last syllable. If you just always accent the last syllable, most of the time you're going to be right. There are some exceptions, obviously. Davar, that's the word we're just looking at. It means word. And so the accent's on the last syllable. Davar, davar, davar. Okay. In the book, wait a minute, I'm getting ahead of myself. Okay. So in the Hebrew Bible, almost all words have an accent. So we'll look at those. We have the Hebrew writing without accents or without vowels. This is what it looks like when you look at the Dead Sea Scrolls. There are handwriting differences. For instance, the Lamed has a really, really long ascender there, but that's the same types of letters. You can, sometimes I have trouble making out people's English handwriting. Handwriting varies from person to person, but basically it's the same letters. So here's sample of the text. This is from Genesis 1:1. And now we have the vowels. And then my Hebrew Bible, and probably the Hebrew Bibles you'll get, most apps, they're going to have the vowels and the accents. If you see anything that doesn't look like a vowel, it's probably an accent. There's all kinds of accent marks. There's a number of them here, the Tifka, the Merka. Well, we'll go through, okay, the Tifka and the Merka and the Otnok. You don't need to learn those now. All you need to know now is that when you see those, they don't look like the vowels you've learned. And so those are accent marks. And that's probably enough for now to just realize, okay, there's a little curl down here. I don't know what that is. There's a little caret over here. I don't know what that is. We really won't even talk about accents till the last chapter 36. But I've got a chart with them that I will give to you at that time. So that's what the accents look like. But when it comes to the book, the textbook, if the accent is not, if there's no accent mark added, you can just, okay, it's the last syllable. If the accent is not on the last syllable, it'll look like this. This word is safer. That's going to be a book or a scroll, safer. And you see it's got this less than sign. Or is that greater than? Less than. Yeah, because I'm reading from, in English, we're going left to right. So that's a less than sign. But anyway, here in this book, it's going to be the accent. And this is what they call a segolate. We'll learn more about that later. But the segolates are words that normally accent on the first syllable. So this would be not safer, it's safer, safer. Okay, 2 ways to classify syllables. I'm going to show these to you. This is not the most important thing to remember, but they have words for the syllables. So here we have devarim, devarim, which means words. It's the devar word that we looked at a little bit ago, and im makes it plural, devarim. So the devarim, the last syllable, that's the accented one, and they call that tonic. And then the pretonic is the one before the syllable before that. And then propretonic is the syllable before the accent. As I said, this isn't something you really have to remember. The only word that you'll probably hear in the future as we go through this class is propretonic. And this is the very reason why that had a comets there, and that's reduced to Sheva. That's propretonic vowel reduction. That's the official name of it. We may just call it a reduced vowel and not worry too much about that. This is not the hottest iron in the fire. If you don't worry about remembering tonic, pretonic, and propretonic. I think those are the ones that are used in the book, but there is also another naming set that some grammars or some people might use, and it's proximity to the end of the word. And so those are ultima, penult, and antepenult. And it's just basically a name for which syllable you're talking about. But again, devarim or devarim is going to be accented on the last syllable there too. So it's good to know this, but there's more important things to memorize than this. All right, now to distinguish a Dagesh Linne from a Dagesh Forte. To review, we talked about a little bit last week, Dagesh Forte, the strong Dagesh, doubles the value of a consonant. Whereas the Dagesh Linne, it does not double. It just tells you which pronunciation you use. Is it a B sound or a V sound in the bait? So we have this word Yabashah, or Yabashah rather, Yabashah. But we have this Dagesh in here, and it's actually doubling it. So we have 2 B's. It actually becomes this. It's like we have 2 baits, 2 B letters. Oh, by the way, if you have a Dagesh Forte and it doubles it, it's always the hard sound, like B instead of V, or P instead of F. The sound is always the hard sound. So if it's got a Dagesh, it's going to have the hard sound. The trick is knowing, is it just the hard sound or is it doubling it? And that's what we're going to be looking at. How do we know how to tell these apart? So when you consider that this bait is doubled like this over here, we have Yab, Ba, Shah, Yabashah. That's how you would pronounce it. But when you say it fast enough, Yabashah, you don't necessarily detect that there's 2 B sounds in there, 2 baits in there. But when it comes to syllabification and to be able to pronounce it better and determine whether like this is obviously an open, this would be a closed syllable. This second one's an open syllable, and the last one is also a closed syllable. It helps to know how this works. And that's going to affect how we know how to handle schwas. We'll talk about that'll be one of the towards the end of the lesson today. The Dagesh Linne does not double the value, so we have malka, and it's just malka. That's all. It's not two coughs out here. Malka, but we'll look at how we determine that. So a Dagesh of a non-begat kafat letter is a Dagesh Forte. Only the begat kafat letters can have a Dagesh Linne. You will never see a Dagesh Linne except in these, the begat kafat letters. These letters and only these letters cannot take a Dagesh Forte. So all the other letters, aside from these, can have a Dagesh Forte. But a guttural and a resh, which is sometimes sides with the gutturals, acts a little bit like the guttural, but not always. They cannot take a Dagesh Forte. So if it's a begat kafat letter, that's the only time you have to determine, is it linne or is it forte? Is it weak or is it strong? So how do we do that? A Dagesh in a non-begat kafat letter is a Dagesh Forte. A non-begat kafat, any other letter is a Dagesh Forte. A Dagesh in a begat kafat letter, if the Dagesh in a begat kafat letter is a Dagesh Forte if it is preceded by a long or short vowel. For instance, we have ata. That's if you're talking to a man, this would be masculine. It's just saying you. It's just a pronoun, second person pronoun you. But we see the Dagesh here. It's a begat kafat letter, and so we know it doesn't change the pronunciation of a tav, but that's okay. We know that be a Dagesh Linne. However, it's preceded by a vowel, the patak there. And so actually, in the way that it is pronounced, it would be, let's try that again. Be like having two tavs and then the hey. So at ta. But when you say it fast, it's just ata. But when you look at syllables, that's where that's important. Okay. Two. So that one is that if the begat kafat letter, if it has a Dagesh Forte, it does have a Dagesh Forte if it's preceded by a vowel. All right. A begat kafat letter is a Dagesh Linne if it's preceded by a consonant. And by a consonant, we oftentimes will have a silent schwa. We'll learn later that this is a silent schwa because it's following a vowel, a short vowel. All right. We'll look at that more later. But this is just stopping us. Mal, ka. Whenever the last sound here, mal, we don't have a vowel sound. It's a schwa, and it's silent. So since it's a consonant sound, it's a Dagesh. This Dagesh and the kaf is a Dagesh Linne. Number 3, a begat kafat letter with the beginning at the beginning of a word takes a Dagesh Linne unless the previous word ends in a vowel. And so, And so this is going to be a Dagesh Linne. Well, assuming the last word maybe ends with a hey with no vowel, then this would just be a Linne. That Devar's word again. So just a quick review on the rules. A Dagesh is, if a Dagesh is in a begat kafat letter, if the sound before the begat kafat letter with the Dagesh is a vowel, it's a strong Dagesh, or Dagesh Forte, doubling the letter. If the sound before the begat kafat letter is a consonant, it is a weak Dagesh, or Dagesh Linne. At the beginning or end of the word, it's weak. So I have a flow chart. We'll see this flow chart appear a few times here. So we see a begat kafat letter. It's got a Dagesh. And we want to know, is it a Forte or a Linne? Well, first of all, we see a Dagesh. Okay, is it a Begad Kafat letter? No, it's not a Begad Kafat letter. Okay, then it's a Dagesh Forte. Always going to be a Dagesh Forte. So, yes, if it is a Begad Kafat letter, is it the first or last letter? If it's yes, then it's a Dagesh Linne. If it's not the first or last letter, we continue down and we said, does it follow a vowel? Yes, it follows a vowel. It's a Dagesh Forte. No, it does not follow a vowel. It's a Dagesh Linne. But we're going to put that to work here, looking at some examples. Yedaber. Yedaber, you can see the word for word here, but it's changed a little bit, the vowels. The other did not have a Dagesh, but this one does have a Dagesh. We'll learn more about that later. That means he will speak. Since the letter with the Dagesh follows the Patak vowel, there's the Patak vowel, there's the Dagesh, there's the Patak. It is a strong Dagesh or Dagesh Forte, and so it's pronounced Yedaber, Yedab Bear, if you want to slow it down, Yedab Bear. So that's doubling it. Midbar. Midbar is wilderness. The silent shva closes the syllable. We'll learn more about that later. The Dagesh in the bait here is weak because mid, the last sound, is a consonant. So it's going to be a weak Dagesh Linne. It's just changing the sound. It says this is a B sound, not a V sound. It's not doubled. It's pronounced midbar. Devar, the Dagesh down here, Dagesh and the Dalet. It's first letter of the word. It's a Begad Kafat letter. It's weak. It does not double. Okay, again, is it a Begad Kafat letter? No. Well, then it's a Dagesh Forte. If it is Begad Kafat, then we have to look and see whether it's first or last letter or does it follow a vowel. So let's look at Hamayim, which means the waters. Is the Dagesh in a Begad Kafat letter? Nope. It's an mem. That is not a Begad Kafat. So, no, it's not in a Begad Kafat letter. That means it's a Dagesh Forte. It doubles the mem, the M sound. Maim. Maim. About Ha Shemaim. Shemaim. We have the heavens. Is the Dagesh in a Begad Kafat letter? Nope, it's in a sheen. It is not. And so that means it's a Dagesh Forte. And it doubles the sheen. Hash Shemaim. Okay. Hakaton. Is the Dagesh in a Begad Kafat letter? Nope, it's in a kof. That's not a Begad Kafat letter. So that means it's a Dagesh Forte doubling the kof. Hak koton, but you just say it quickly, you don't get that. Hak koton. Ha katon. Ha katon. The small. So again, check to see if it's a Begad Kafat letter. If it's not a Begad Kafat letter, it has to be Dagesh Forte. If it is a Begad Kafat letter, look to see if it's at the first or the end of the word. If it's in the middle of the word, then you look to see if it's following a vowel or not. Figure it out. Okay. Ba'aretz. Ba'aretz. The on the earth. Is it in a Begad Kafat letter? Yes, it is. It's in a bait. That is a Begad Kafat letter. Is it the first or last letter? Yes, it is the first letter. So it's a Dagesh Linne. It says it's a B, not a V. It's not doubled. Okay. And then we have mitakat. It's from under. From under. Is the Dagesh in a Begad Kafat letter? Yes, it is. The Dagesh is in a Tav. That's a Begad Kafat letter. Is it the first or last letter? Nope, it is not. Does it follow a vowel? Yes, it does. It follows a hirik. Mitachat. So it's going to be a Dagesh Forte, doubling the Tav. Mitachat. But you can say it fast, just mitachat. Okay. So kind of simplifying the rules a little bit. We covered the stuff that the book has. A Dagesh and a non-Begadkipat letter is a Dagesh Forte. A Dagesh in the Begadkipat letter is a Dagesh Forte if it is preceded by a long or short vowel. So those are the two main rules. It's going to be true most of the time. A ta we looked at as a doubled because it's doubled. The Dagesh is doubled because it's following that patak. At ta. There are a few exceptions. We'll look at some of those as we go. But that's going to be most all the time. All right. So we looked at the Dagesh Linne, Dagesh Forte. Now we want to look at the Shva. We have two Shvas. We talked about a little bit last week. There's the silent Shva and the vocal Shva. The Shva is this little colon-looking thing right there. That's how you spell Shva in Hebrew. Shva. Looks like a colon. And you might, yeah, also I have a note here. You'll notice that is the reduced vowels has that right in front of it, showing that it's reduced vowel. The Shva is not a vowel. There are two kinds of Shvas, silent and vocal. Silent Shva is exactly that. It has no sound at all. It simply marks the end of a syllable, and that's all. But the vocal Shva has a very, very slight sound, like the E in severe. When you say the word severe, you almost jump from the S to the V right away. The E is mostly bypassed. In the same way with Shva, it's just hardly there. In fact, I was talking to our last trip to Israel, talking to my tour guide, and his way of explaining it was that the Shva never makes a sound. Well, but when you hear him speak, you can tell he had a vocal Shva. It's just like I say, it's like we here in America, we use the English language, even if we don't understand the grammar. We still use the English language. And we see that in Israel too. People who natively speak Hebrew, there's a lot of the grammar that they don't get. But they know, they understand it, but they don't get the grammar. So vocal Shva has a very slight sound. It doesn't belong to a vowel class, A, E, I, or U, it's not short, long, or reduced. It's just a Shva. It's all it is. And it's going to be one of two things, vocal or silent. The Shva is silent if it follows a short vowel. Otherwise, it's vocal. That's really all. Well, it's almost all. The Shva is silent if it follows a short vowel. That's why I said you want to make sure you remember what the short vowels are, that you know that they're short. I mentioned that last week. Otherwise, it's a vocal Shva if it doesn't follow a short vowel. Gutturals cannot take a vocal Shva. They can only have a silent Shva. Resh, we said that Resh is not exactly the same as the gutturals because Resh can take either silent or vocal Shvas. When it comes to Dageshes, they follow the gutturals. The Resh follows the gutturals. When it comes to Shva, this is why the Resh is not a guttural, because it can take either. So the short vowel review, we have ba, be, bi, bo, bu. It's the patak, the segol, the hirik, the kametz hatuf, and the kibbutz. Those are our short vowels. And so if the Shva follows one of those, it'll be silent. So we have another flow chart. Is the Shva at the end of the word? Yes, it's silent. No, go to the next question. Does the Shva follow a short vowel? Yes, it does follow a short vowel. It's silent. If it's not a short vowel, it's vocal. It's just that easy. It might seem hard. I think you'll catch on to it pretty quickly. You just have to know which vowels are the short vowels. So if it follows a short vowel, then it's silent. It's good to know all the examples on pages 18 and 19 of the grammar. It's good to know that a guttural cannot take a vocal Shva. Is it necessary to memorize all these things? No. When it comes to the Shva, you really basically only need to remember two things. Is the Shva at the end of the word? Yes, it's silent. No. Well, we have to ask another question. Does the Shva follow a short vowel? If it does, it's silent. If it does not follow a short vowel, it's vocal. Some examples applying the rule. We have midbar. We looked at this word a little bit ago, wilderness. The shva follows a short vowel. The hirik is a short vowel. That's not to be, now if this was a hirik yod, that would be different. That would be a long vowel, but it's not a hirik yod. It's just a hirik. Hirik is a short I vowel. And so midbar, that means this is a silent shva because it follows a short vowel. It's pronounced midbar. There's our syllable. Both syllables are closed. Mead, bar. Both syllables end with a consonant. Mead bar. The dagesh following a vowel is a forte. We talked about dageshes. This right here. Dagesh following a vowel is a forte, but the shva is not a vowel. Therefore, the bait has a dagesh lene. It's a B, not a V. Okay, examples of applying the rule. If two shvas are in a row, the first is silent because it follows a short vowel. Here we have an example. Here's two shvas, and hirik is a short vowel. So the first shva is silent. The second shva, is it following a short vowel? No, a shva is not a vowel. So the second one is vocal. So it's yik talu. Yik talu is how you would pronounce that. Yik, and it's silent shva. Talu. Talu is the vocal shva. Yik talu. If the shva is under the last letter of a word, it is silent. So we have kataft. Kataft. We have again, we have two. So this first shva is following a short vowel, so it's silent. This one would be vocal, however, it's the last one. And so if it's the last letter, it's still silent. So we have kataft, and that's only two syllables, ka and taft. This is one of those exceptions where we don't just have two letters in a syllable. Okay, if the shva is under the first letter of a word, it is vocal because it is not following a short vowel. We looked at devarim. De, va, reem. Devarim, words. Devarim. It has three syllables, two open, one closed. Open, open, closed. Devarim. Okay, still applying, another example applying the rules. We have ya'atek, ya'atek. I mean va'atek. Sorry. I'm not, boy, I'm off here. Vaya take. Vaya take. So we have a shva. It's following a short vowel. So it's just vaya. So this is actually making no sound at all. That ayin, it's a silent letter. The shva is silent. So we just have vai, ya, and then take. Vaya take. And he moved. Okay. Here again, we have a shva under a guttural. We know it's going to be silent, but it's also silent because it's following a short vowel. Vayak por, vayak por, and he dug, vayak por. But it's following, it's okay to remember that gutturals can only take silent shvas, but if you look and see the vowel there, then you know it's going to be silent anyway. So I'm saying if you remember the rules, those two easy rules, will take care of the others. Now, this is a name, Reuven, Reuven. The shva is vocal, it's the first letter. Notice the resh can have, okay, yeah, and the resh has a vocal shva here. Reuven. Now they have an aleph, but there's no vowel really. Well, ooh, I guess those two would have to go together. Reuven. Reuven. Reuben. See a son. Yeah, it's vocal because it's not following a short vowel. It's not following anything. So Reuven. If the schwa is under a letter with a Dagesh Forte, it is a vocal because the letter is doubled. So we have hum. This is a Forte because this is not a big adjective. That has to be a Forte. So there's two mems here. Hum lachim, except that this has to be vocal under that second one. So if both mems, let's draw that out separately, bigger over here. If both mems have schwas, the first one is silent, ham, and then melachim, ham melachim. But we can say it fast, just ham melachim. So it's a vocal schwa. And it has four, well, here it is. I got it down here. Ha, ham, me, la, him. Because it's doubled. Dagesh Forte. All right, a few more. What are we doing? 8 minutes. Barakah, barakah. We see the it's at the beginning. It doesn't follow a short vowel, so it's a vocal schwa. The second one, we see that that's a Dagesh because it's following a vowel here. This is a Dagesh Forte, so it's doubled. So we see these two baits here. And so the second one is going to be vocal. The first one is silent. So ha, ba, ha, he, ma. Ha, ba, he, ma. That'd be the beast. The not like cattle, the cattle. Let's go with that. The cattle. So that's a vocal schwa. Under the lamed is following a short vowel, so that's silent schwa, malka. And then the one under the sheen is following a short vowel, mishpat, judgment. Okay, so we ran through some examples of that to distinguish a kametz from a kametz hatuf. Okay. Because these are two vowels that look exactly alike. You have a kametz, you have a kametz hatuf, so how can you tell the difference? The kametz itself is a long A, as in father, ah, and it occurs way more frequently than the kametz hatuf, which is a short O, but it still sounds like a long O to us, but it occurs for a short amount of time. O is in whole. The kametz hatuf can only occur in closed, unaccented syllables. That's the only time that you'll get a kametz hatuf. And in fact, not every closed, unaccented syllable is going to be and I'll show you how we can tell those two. But that's the first rule. Most of the time it's going to be A is in father, ah, and sometimes if it's a closed, unaccented syllable, it could be a kametz hatuf with an O sound, a short O sound. When I say short, it's a part of the short vowels, the list of short vowels. The kametz hatuf can only occur in closed, unaccented syllables. In the word davar, neither kametz is a hatuf because the first syllable is open and the second syllable is closed, but it is accented. Davar is the accented syllable, or var is the accented syllable. So both of those are just plain kametz. Now we look at kokma. Kokma has one of each. Because kokma, the accented syllable, is the last one, kokma. So this is a closed, unaccented syllable, kok. And so it's an O, kokma, wisdom. The most common Hebrew word that has a kametz hatuf is kol. And kol appears 5,415 times. And it means all or each or every. And it's pronounced kol, not call. That you just learn that way. You just learn it as kol. And that takes care of a whole lot of the kametz hatufs. So what if the kametz could be either? Is it possible to have a closed unaccented syllable and yet be a kametz instead of kametz hatuf? And yes, it could be. And when it happens, they put a metheg, and that's this vertical bar right next to the kametz. And that tells you that is a long A, that is kachama. That changes since this is a long vowel, this becomes a vocal schwa, kachama, kachama. So the method, pronounce the following words. Here's some examples of words that are very, very similar. We have shomra, shomra, closed, unaccented syllable. The accented ra is the accent of shomra. But over here, we have a metheg, shamra, shamara. This one is a command to keep, and this says she kept. This feminine ending tells us she kept. Okay, so that's shamara and shomra. Then we have kachama and kokma. Kokma is wisdom, and kachama is she is wise. So when it has the metheg, it's A is in father. Same way, both of these. Okay, and there's another example, yadaka. Yadaka is the hand of you, or your hand, yadaka, and it's got this metheg there. So you know it's a ya, not a yo. All right. And special rules for syllabification. The furtive patak, this is another one of the exceptions we talked about earlier. It only happens with, all right, let's go back to the beginning here. Normally, the vowel is pronounced after the consonant. There is one exception to that rule, and that's the furtive patak. A furtive patak can occur in words ending with a chet or ayin, only these two letters, chet or ayin. The furtive patak must be pronounced before the guttural letter. Well, the ayin is silent, and so if it's pronounced before that, then you're not going to have any sound after the vowel. So let's look at some examples here. If you have a word and the patak is under it, this is cha, cha. That's, and see how the patak is centered under the ket there. But we take the word for spirit, ruach. We have ru, and then we pronounce the patak next, ruach. And so the syllable, the consonant is the last sound, ruach. We pronounce the patak before it. And notice how the patak is underneath this right leg. That's how you can tell it's a furtive patak, is because they move it over. So this is pronounced ruach. So that's what a ket looks like. Okay, this is another example of the same thing. This is another ket with a patak, what it looks like. But then this is another common word that we'll see, mizbeach. Mizbeach. That's an altar, a place of sacrifice. Zavak is an altar. A mizbeach is the place. Zavak is a sacrifice. Mizbeach is the place of sacrifice, which is an altar. So, but notice that it's underneath this right leg. And then when we look at the ayin, it's the same way. We either have it centered or in the expanse of the sky, we have rakia, ra, ki, ah, and then the ayin doesn't make a sound at all. We're almost done. Then there's the quiescent aleph. Well, this is pretty much self-explanatory. If you have an aleph and it's silent and there's no vowels, that's what they call the quiescent aleph. It doesn't make any sound at all. And so this word for sin here, chatat, you just have no representation of the sound there, chatat. You just go chata. Notice there's a dagesh here, so there's two tets there. Let's put that ta. That's the wrong letter written there. I need to correct my slide. But there's two it's Dagesh Forte, so it's like two of them. Katat. So we have kat-tat for the syllables. But that's a quiescent aleph. Pretty easy too. If it's an aleph and there's no vowel, then it can't make a sound. And we have diphthongs. I think this is the last thing. We have diphthongs in English. So for instance, isle, we have the AI, and we don't pronounce it IE or something. It's isle. It has an I sound. Sounds like I. A is in eight or wait. That's a diphthong. We have diphthongs in English. And we have diphthongs in Hebrew. So we have Hashemayim. Notice I don't say Hashamayim. I don't say Hashamayim. It's Hashemayim. This is a diphthong where this patak and yod and hirik and the mem at the end, those become one sound, Hashemayim. Yeah, here it is here. Sounds like ayin. Hashemayim means the heavens. Ma'im means waters, and that's ma'im. You still have this same patak, yod, hirik, mem. Lila, this patak, yod is it's lie. Lila is night. We looked up Lila Tov, I think, last week. And then bite, house is bite. I know you hear bait a lot. That's house of. That's in what they call a construct, house of. But just a house, bite. So that's a diphthong. And then we have a segol vowel with the hey. We have ele. We have a with the stere, but then ele. It's this combination of segol hey, ele. That's another diphthong. And then Adonai, if you're referring to God as Lord, Adonai, and you have this comets yod, Adonai, that comets yod makes the I sound, Adonai. Now, if you had somebody, you're calling them Lord, like somebody walks up to King David and says, my Lord, that's Adoni. Adoni. It's spelled differently. Adoni. That's not a diphthong. If you say your God, Elohim is God, Elohecha, that's your God. And then his words, Devarav, his word, Devar, but Devarav, you have this comets, Yod, Vav, it's just pronounced Devarav. So those are called diphthongs. That's just different sounds that you get by letter combinations, and we do it in English. So the furtive patak is not considered a separate syllable. Okay, ruach. The quiescent aleph is not considered a consonant for a syllable. There's katat. You just kind of ignore that it's there as far as dividing syllables. And diphthongs are considered one vowel for syllabification, so shamayim. Okay, and then that's it. So now we've accumulated the tools. We have alphabet tools, Legos. We have the alphabet Legos, the vowel Legos, the syllable and pronunciation Legos, and now we're going to be able to use that to build things in Hebrew. It is after time, it's 5 after, so we're going to cut it off. We'll come back and look at Deuteronomy 6:5. It's going to make this our first. Well, let's just go. It won't take long to read. Shema, Yisrael, Yahweh or Adonai, Eloheinu, Yahweh, Echad, Va'ahavta, et Yahweh Elohecha, B'chol levavka, Uv'chol nafeshka, nafshaka, Uv'chol ma'odecha. Hear, Israel, Yahweh, the God of us, our God, Yahweh, one. And you will love Yahweh. We'll come back and talk about that here in a few weeks. Love Yahweh, your God, with all the heart of you, with all the soul of you, and with all the exceedingness of you. We'll look at that later. That's why we read Hebrew, to know him better, to love him more, walk in his ways, become more like Jesus. Oh yeah, we need to go over the vocabulary. We do need to do that. That's on pages 22 and 23. I know you're on mute, but you could just repeat it after me. Av means father. Adon means Lord. And we see Adonai, or this side, we looked at that already a little bit. Adam is man. Adamah is ground. You can see a relationship there since God formed man from the ground between Adam and Adamah. Ach is brother. Achot is sister. Ish is a man. El is God. That's just means a mighty one. It's the simplest form of God, or term for God. Elohim, much more common for God. Aim is mother. Eretz is land or earth. Isha is a woman, which makes sense. Man, if you go back up to man, Ish, and God formed from his side a woman, and he called her Isha. He's Ish, and she's Isha, the feminine form of that, because she is taken from man. Bait is house. Bain is son. Bat is daughter. Devar is a word. We've seen that one. Yom, we've actually seen that in our modern phrases. Lila is night. Na'ar is a youth. That'd be a male youth, a young man or a boy. And Na'ara, that's the same word, youth, but it's feminine, so that'd be a young girl. So with that, that should be it. I talked about later. Oh, the fog. If you feel like you're in a fog, the fog goes with you. And as you go back and look over things we studied in the past, you'll see that the fog is lifted in the past. It'll always seem that way. Please stick with it. Don't give up. It'll become clear. So go ahead and work on exercise 3 in the workbook. That's pages 12 through 14. And also, I had given you a pronunciation practice worksheet. You might want to work on that. I was hoping we get to go over it today, but we're not. We're out of time. You want to memorize the vocabulary, how to pronounce syllables, how to recognize the Dagesh, Linne, and Forte, how to recognize the silent vocal schwas, and then go ahead and read chapter 4, and we'll begin studying nouns. Any questions? Sorry for going over. There's a lot of stuff to cover. These first 3 weeks have been heavy. Next week it'll be less heavy, and some other weeks will be maybe less heavy too. There's just a lot to get. We had to build a foundation. That's what we got. Any questions? All right. Have a good week.
Thank you.
You're welcome.